Today, as part of our 2021 Ask an Expert series, I am pleased to welcome Azita Martin, the GM for Artificial Intelligence for Retail and CPG at NVIDIA. Azita, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I think this is going to be a great show. I'm excited to sit down with you, pick your brain as an expert and dive into all that we can around AI and its applicability across retail and CPG. But before we do that, first, I got to ask a little bit about your background. I think this might be an Omni talk first, because I think you might be the first time we've had somebody with a degree in aerospace engineering on our program. So I'd love to hear a little bit about you. What's your background? What does your job entail? The whole nine yards.
Sure. Wow, you're really going back as aerospace engineer. I did start as an aerospace engineer. I actually moved here from Spain, and I wanted to become an aerospace engineer, and I did that, and I worked for 7 years in that industry. And then went and got my MBA and went into management consulting for several years. And then from there into high tech. And really in the past 5 years, I've been very focused on machine learning and AI. And been with NVIDIA about 2.5 years. And my team is in charge of really three things that are focused on the retail and consumer package industry. And number one is we actually help developers build better applications faster. And so we work with retailers to understand what their biggest challenges are. And then we really go and look for disruptive software companies, many of which are small startups. And we assign technical AI experts from our company at NVIDIA to actually handhold these younger companies to make sure that they're using the best AI algorithms and to really optimize their algorithms. And so that's really a key part of what we do. In parallel, we've developed a software application framework that has pre-trained models for different use cases. And again, the type of application frameworks and software libraries that helps developers build better applications faster. And then thirdly, we really work with executives at retail companies to advise them on what are the best AI applications for the challenges that they have.
Got it. So interesting. That's an interesting role. You're kind of a little bit of a shepherd and kind of a farmer at the same time, depending on which of those roles you want to break out and how you want to look at it. I'm curious, what captivated you? You said you spent about 5 years in AI and machine learning now. What captivated you with that discipline? What made you want to, spend more time and focus on
it? I was doing a lot of analytics, and I live in Silicon Valley, and data analytics 7-8 years ago was really a big deal. The more I got involved in that, the more I realized that machine learning was really heading in the direction of being able to provide advice and recommendations to people. A lot of people often think of AI as automation and replacing jobs. And yes, there are some components of AI that help with automation, but I would say it automates mundane work that people don't want, like picking and packing an order. And it leaves the people to do the things that really matter the most in terms of customer interaction and so forth, right? So I think what captivated me is that I feel that any company in any industry that wants to stay competitive really needs to leverage AI. And I look at some of the leaders in the retail industry, for example, Walmart, that we work with very, very closely. And they have, from the top up, from their CEO, they've invested in AI. And that's what's really keeping them competitive. So for me, it's a field in high tech, because most of my career in the past 15 years has been in high tech. I feel that AI is at the forefront of what is going on with technology and innovation.
Right. Yeah. And another interesting angle there too to what you said, I imagine we'll get into this a little bit. And I know we've talked about in some of our writing too, is some of the jobs are jobs that can't even get done by humans. Like there's just, so much complexity to them, but yet the demands of the consumers are such that they need to get done. And you almost have to use AI to make them happen. So, well, let's talk about that then, because I think the interesting point here too, before we get into some of what you've written and we co-published on Omni Talk together. Let's also talk a little bit about NVIDIA. Like, so how does NVIDIA itself kind of fit into this whole intersection of retail, digital transformation? I hear lots of words thrown around like GPUs and CPUs. And, as a former retailer and merchant, those were things, 10 years ago, I never had to think about, but now you probably actually do. So I'd love to spend some time on understanding why that is from your perspective.
Yeah. So NVIDIA started as a company, over 20 years ago, really focused on gaming and
Okay.
building the GPUs or gaming chips to make games as interactive as possible, as if you're part of that game, right? But our CEO about 7 or 8 years ago really saw AI as one of the most important parts of enterprise and heavily invested in that. So we are not a GPU company. We are an accelerated computing company. And what that means is that, yes, we have GPUs that are used for example, training of algorithms. And we have GPUs that are for inference. In other words, the recommendations that the algorithm makes. But most importantly, 70% of our engineers are actually software engineers. And we have a set of software libraries for different use cases that really accelerate the compute and the performance of the algorithm. So what that means is that using one of these different libraries, depending on what AI application you're building, first and foremost, you're able to train your applications significantly faster. And we're talking like 100 times faster. What that means is instead of like building an algorithm and waiting 8 hours for it to train, it'll train in an hour. And now you're able to train your algorithm more frequently. The more frequently you train your algorithm, the more accurate it becomes. The more data, the more training, the more accurate, right? Yeah. And the more accurate it is, that means that the recommendation that the algorithm is making is helping, right? And then we also have software libraries and GPUs for inference at the edge. So for example, shrinkage is a big problem in the retail industry. And there are algorithms that have been built by some of our customers and some of our software partners that actually do real-time inference at the edge. In other words, if somebody is at self-checkout and it's switching tickets or it's pretending like they're scanning, but they're not.
Scanning bananas and buying steak.
Exactly. It actually shuts down the point of sale machine and sends a text to one of the store associates. So they do it very discreetly, but it's real time. It's not like, oh, theft happened and let's find the cameras and see who did it. It's really stopping shrinkage right there as it's happening.
That makes sense. I didn't know the background of video games too. That's really interesting to me as well, because we've often talked about in our writing how the future of retail is almost like a video game where the consumer is almost the main player character in the game, and everything is acting in and around that main player, and it's all happening by the way of how the data is being processed and computed in response to what that consumer is doing day in and day out. So that's good to know. I didn't know that before. So I think, we together on this topic published a paper called Driving Agility in Retail with AI on Omni Talk in December. And in that paper, we really highlighted 3 areas where we thought AI was really set to drive the most value. And the first thing that you singled out was in the area of supply chain. I'd like to cover all of the areas with you today, but specifically for those listening, let's start with supply chain. And you mentioned a few areas a little bit already, but why do you think that's really a key focus here as we look to 2021?
Well, I mean, you work with a lot of retailers, and so do we. We know that especially in the past 10 months, supply chain has become the livelihood of retail, like making sure the
Right.
customer buying behavior has changed so much. Like, who would have guessed that you have COVID and people worry about toilet paper as opposed to something else, right? And so I think that supply chain has become super important. There are various components that AI can help. The area where we are seeing a lot of interest, and we've actually worked with Walmart on this for several years, and there's a blog on our website that people can see, is being able to use machine learning to again dramatically accelerate how frequently you can run your forecasting. So, for example, in the case of Walmart, they have over 100,000 SKUs and over 5,000 stores. So it's a combination of 500 million item to store combinations. And they wanted to run forecasting on a daily basis and not on a weekly or biweekly basis. And so they decided to build their own forecasting solution. And we, of course, partnered with them and helped them use one of our key data science software libraries called Rapids, which is open source and available to anyone, and guided them on how to optimize their solution. They know their business of retail better than we do. What we know better than they do is the best algorithms, the best way to optimize it. And so we partnered together on that, and it's really improved the accuracy of their forecasting, as well as the frequency of being able to run that on a daily basis. So that's definitely one example of supply chain. I think another area is just automating and building intelligence into the warehouse. And so again, this is the perfect example of, you're getting a lot more orders coming in online, and how do you quickly are able to fulfill those orders. And so that's about improving the throughput in the distribution centers. And there again, we're partnering with several companies, including Dematic, which provides automation and intelligence so that items can be stored intelligently in the right multi-shuttle cabinets, that robots know how to exactly go and retrieve the right products, and then pick and pack robots that are basically fulfilling those orders. And again, just even a few minutes of increase in throughput dramatically increases how many orders can be fulfilled, and obviously improve the sales and revenue of the retailers. So those two are very important areas. And now we're working on last mile delivery, which is
that was going to be my question. Okay, last mile, you're seeing kind of an influx now, and how do we get that even smarter and better, given that there's now infinite numbers of different nodes in which people are having to ship or pick up products from? Okay.
Right, exactly. So we're working on truck routing optimization.
Truck routing.
And of course, curbside pickup is a perfect example that lends itself to computer vision, being able to recognize, for example, the model and the color of the car, and be able to match that to the order, so that you make sure that the right order is put in the back of the right car. Like, last thing you want to do is put somebody else's order in the back of somebody else's car, right? So these are, really, really, really important areas that AI brings tremendous amount of value, that first of all helps retailers with customer satisfaction and their ability to meet the needs of the customers, but secondly, a huge financial gain in terms of keeping the margins much greater than what they are today.
Yeah, I never thought about that pickup problem. It's like getting the wrong suitcase at the airport, for all of us that have had that happen at some point in time. That makes sense that you would see it migrate in that direction. Now, the other area you talked about was e-commerce. So I think all the supply chain use cases, I think, make sense. Forecasting, it feels like forecasting forever has been a key focus of most retailers. How do we get better at that day in and day out? But where is its applicability now in e-commerce? What areas are you seeing retailers gravitate towards AI the most?
Right. Well, I think we all know that Amazon really pioneered recommendations, right? And now really all the innovative retailers have really invested in using AI for recommendation system. Now, some might say, well, I'm already doing recommendation system, right? But the recommendation system is not always about people that bought this also bought that. It's often about personalizing it, right?
Okay.
What have you bought in the past? What else do I know about you as a customer? And how do I make sure that I'm recommending products that really meet your needs, right? And so, again, now there are specific AI solutions that that really dramatically improve the accuracy and the personalization of recommendation system that obviously drive revenue. And again, we are now partnering with several retailers on that. But one area that might seem really boring, but it makes a huge difference is using AI for tagging the products on your e-commerce. I mean, who wants to go get a degree in data science and spend 80% of their time tagging data? That's the kind of stuff data scientists don't want to do.
No, 100%. This is what I was talking about before. I mean, this is, I think, the jobs that just aren't going to get done, especially when you talk about marketplaces and how fast they're growing and the number of SKUs and the different item attributes that are coming online. Like, no one wants to do that. And I've done that. I've had to tag items. It's about one of the most boring jobs I could possibly do.
Exactly.
And I unfortunately didn't have to do it that often. But say more, because I think that's an important element for people to hear, is that there's a smarter way to do this than how, say, retailers or merchants have traditionally cataloged their product lines for reporting and analysis purposes.
Yeah. So again, there's a slew of really innovative startups and companies that have developed these algorithms that learn from the data scientists. So initially, your data scientists will start tagging and labeling the data, and then the algorithm is really learning from your data scientist, and then it can go and automate the other 80% of the data. But what's even more important about it is a lot of these tagging that are done by the AI algorithms is tagging at attribute level.
Right.
And that makes customers be able to find what they want. And so if we're in January and everybody is going gluten-free and, this and that. And so if you've got every cereal that you have in your website or your e-commerce site tagged as with attributes, it's got vanilla flavor and it's gluten-free and it's got this and that.
Right.
It really helps your customers very quickly find the products that they're looking for, right? And so I think it's both. It's the ability to really tag at very detailed attribute level and taking a very cumbersome and boring job of tagging and automating that through AI, because that's where AI learns from the human being and then does the work for them.
Does computer vision play into that as well? So that it sounds like there's a little bit of like, the algorithms can understand the data tagging that's happening in the background. You hear a lot about computer vision too. Can it also correlate against, like, visually then what AI is able to see in terms of what those items also are, to make that even more enhanced and more precise?
Right. I mean, so one area is visual search, right?
Okay.
I like this thing. I've seen this on Pinterest. I want to go find it somewhere else. And also visual search is used for finding items on marketplaces that are illegal or they're fake items,
Yeah,
right?
counterfeits.
For example, so look at some of the top brands, and they want to be able to go identify in marketplaces if there's fake items out there that replicate their brand. And so any company that has a marketplace really is using visual search to ensure that the people that are selling products on their marketplace are not selling any illegal items or fake items and so forth. So that's certainly another important area. And of course, the visual search of being able to, you've seen something and you want to find that on your website. And so those are another really important part of using computer vision as part of e-commerce.
Yeah, so that the image matches the description or the attributes like you were describing before. All right, well, let's look at the third area then. The third area, which I think is our favorite area, which is really the intersection of physical and digital retail. We talked about fulfillment, we talked about e-commerce, kind of the backbone of this whole experience. But the third area you pinpointed was what you called, I think, the intelligent store. What are you seeing in terms of the way people are going to shop physical retail and where AI is going to have the biggest impact here in the short term?
Yeah. So actually, intelligent store is where we are seeing tremendous interest from the retailers.
Really? Okay.
So intelligent stores is a combination of things. I say at the highest level, you have a lot of intelligence about how people shop on your e-commerce site, but you don't have the same level of granularity of understanding of customer behavior. So one area is just pure store analytics. Where are people walking through which aisles, if they go from one aisle to the other, and how do you then understand the demographics of your stores, the flow, the heat map, where people are hanging out more. And that allows you to basically optimize your merchandising, right? For higher revenue. But
like traditional funnel economics that you'd see on like a website, bringing those into the store level. That's basically what you're describing there.
Yeah, no, that's a great way. I don't think about analyzing it that way, but it is the funnel analysis. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, but the other area where retailers are seeing huge return on their investment is to stop shrinkage. And so more and more retailers are adding self-checkout lanes. And we know that most retailers are losing 1.5% to 2% of their revenue to shrinkage. And a lot of that shrinkage is happening in the store. It's happening at self-checkout lanes. It's happening in cashier cashier assisted checkout lane. So sweethearting, right? My girlfriend's on the other side and I'm just going to not scan something that,
or I missed something in the basket. It goes through, it's in the bottom of the cart that you can't see in that section or something like that. Yeah. So
that's an area where there's several very, very innovative software companies that have developed, proven solutions that are deployed at some very, very big retailers, especially the supermarket and grocery market. And it's really, that's where we're seeing tremendous interest because the investment there pays for itself literally in 2 months. I mean, we've done ROI calculations with customers, and you take a typical large retailer supermarket that has 1,000 stores, and if you take their revenue and calculate, what is 1.5% loss, they're losing, somewhere around, $500,000 a store potentially per year.
Right.
And so when you look at the investment of putting one server in the back of the store with NVIDIA GPUs, obviously, and then install on that the software for asset protection, that actually can pay for itself in literally several months, because it can stop shrinkage, I would say, at self-checkout lanes and point of sale by a very, very large percentage, in excess of 70%.
And so
these applications.
Oh, and so just so I understand that, so just so I make sure, so I double click into that. So like you're saying, like it's pretty straightforward, then people can just use the kind of tried and true algorithms that you've seen work other places, and that can alert the retailers within a couple of months to impact their business into when they are seeing those specific issues potentially arise while they're in store.
Now let me clarify that. It's really the hardware and infrastructure technology pays for itself in 2 months.
Okay.
But you're actually stopping the shrinkage and the theft in real time as it's happening.
As soon as it's implemented. Okay.
The software is implemented at the edge on a machine that's in the back of the store. And when somebody is doing ticket switching or mis-scanning, it shuts down the point of sale machine and it notifies via text of an associate, and the associate usually does not come and confront the customer. They will come and say, sorry, let me help you rescan everything, the machine. I have to reset the machine, right? So that's a very, very, big area of savings for retailers. So, a retailer that's losing, $500,000 a year per store, even if, only 30% of that was at self-checkout lanes and point of sale, that's $150,000 per store per year. And you multiply that by your number of stores, that's a tremendous amount of saving and avoiding the shrinkage that's been really growing in the industry. So that's another big area for intelligent stores. And of course, there's other use cases. There's autonomous shopping or friction cashierless shopping. So the Amazon Go style solutions, and a lot of retailers are moving to that as well. We're seeing that many retailers are going from very, very large stores to smaller stores with micro fulfillment centers in the back of that store. Okay. And, again, the ability to make it frictionless, especially for the millennials and the younger generation, to just walk in, log into their application, walk in, and then computer vision recognizes what they've picked and put in their basket, and that's what gets charged to them. And if they put something in the basket and take it back out and put it on the shelf, it obviously does not charge them on that. So those are some really, really important use cases. We also have use cases around stock out, right? I mean, that's an important issue. So if the shelves are starting to get empty, immediately notifying the store associate to replenish the stock on the shelf. So those are all really important use cases.
Is that happening through computer vision processing too, or how are the stockouts being monitored like that? The way you described.
Stockouts are monitored by having cameras that look into the shelves. So these are cameras that usually are installed on the shelves, and it just detects when it goes beyond a certain threshold. Then it notifies an associate to restock those shelves.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I'm glad we double clicked into that conversation on the assets protection side too, because that's pretty straightforward and pretty simple and can happen, pretty immediately should people be interested in looking at. And then I think the other, I want to make sure people heard that too. So you have seen, from your vantage point, you've seen a much bigger interest on the retail side in kind of the Amazon Go computer vision style operation in terms of how do we bring something like that to market? You're seeing the industry move in that direction?
I would say of all the intelligent store use cases, the top two are asset protection and stock out. Okay. Those are the cores. And the reason is the asset protection pays for all the other applications you want to install in the store, because you can install multiple applications. But actually, if you stop the shrinkage that's happening, now you're saving enough money to start investing in autonomous shopping and store analytics and so forth. But I think the top two are asset protection and stock out.
Okay, so they can really fuel everything. When you look at everything we talked about, so all three rungs, is it the same two buckets, or would you say that there's a good place or a quote unquote smart place to start? Like, how would you advise retailers to look at everything we just talked about? Where should they invest their money first?
Yeah, my first advice is, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing as a retailer, right? If shrinkage is a big problem and it continues to grow, that's certainly an area that you can buy a solution that's proven, that's highly scalable, and implement that and stop that shrinkage. And these are not 1-year projects. These are 3 months projects that you can basically run a 30-day POC, then try it in 5 stores for another 60 days, and then easily deploy that across thousands of stores. So that certainly is one area that I think it's almost the most common problem in the industry. And so that would be a good area if shrinkage is a problem for you. I think that we're seeing a lot of interest, like I said, in forecasting, in stockouts, and and curbside pickup. Those are really the areas that we're seeing. And we don't work as much with, for example, the fashion industry. We primarily work with mass merchants and supermarkets and quick service restaurants. So a lot of fast food restaurants and so forth. And for all of them, forecasting has become very important, and anything that leverages AI with computer vision for better customer experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think as we're looking at the landscape right now, especially for 2021, it's like you got to look at really forecasting last mile options to make sure you've got that table stakes customer experience. And then, yeah, assets protection, preventing shrink is probably a good way to help fund some of that activity like you described. Final question here before we play How Millennial Are You? A lot of retailers, I think, always are faced with this question, especially around this topic too. Like, do I just try to build all this myself, or do I, build the build versus buy discussion? Like, how do you think about that in the context of everything we just talked about?
Yeah. So I think what we see is that most retailers go with a hybrid approach.
Okay.
They will take a problem that is big, and speed of delivery is the most critical for them. And so they're willing to go buy a AI solution that is proven and go deploy that right away, because the opportunity cost of taking a year or 18 months to build it yourself is at the end not worth it. So we see that. But then, we think that there's a combination. And so if you have a large number of data scientists, then you can decide what are some of the solutions that you want to build yourself. So I think it's a combination of, do you have the right talent? For example, some companies have machine learning data scientists, but they don't have computer vision data scientists. So if some of the problems that you're facing requires computer vision and you don't have that talent, then buying that solution from a software solution provider that's got hundreds of engineers working on that one solution is something that's certainly worth considering.
I liked how you said it too. I mean, I think oh, sorry, say that again, Azita, please.
So we see that combination of building some and buying some from most retailers.
Got it. Yeah, I think what I was going to say is the part I like about what you said too is it's like you can do a lot of this really quickly. And a lot of what you're describing isn't necessarily it's important from a consumer experience perspective, a longevity perspective, but it's not necessarily like differentiating 100% one option A versus option B. The importance is this: you're just doing it, and you're doing it quickly and fast, and you're making improvements. So I think that's an important lens by which anyone listening could start to think about this discussion that we're having about how do you make AI applicable quickly and fast. One more question I have to ask, because I think AI gets thrown around quite a lot, especially machine learning gets thrown around a lot. It feels like those two are almost like conjoined twins at the hip sometimes. Your background, what is the one thing you wish people knew about AI that maybe they don't understand really well? And maybe it's even evident from some of the questions I've been asking in the context of this interview today. But from your vantage point, what is that one thing you wish you could impart on everybody, right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that you don't really have to have an army of data scientists to deploy AI. There are solutions that you can buy. I mean, it's kind of what I talked about before, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Look at retailers are expert in retailing. That's
right.
Core business, right? And so take a look at the challenges that you have and say, where do I build, and where do I buy, and do I have the right skill set? Because there's nothing worse than not having the right skill set, building the wrong thing, and losing that opportunity cost. That's number one. And time is of essence, right? I mean, you are seeing how many retailers are going out of business, right? Because reinventing yourself is really key. And I think that AI is key to reinventing retail. There's just so much innovation coming. So that's one. And I think the most important thing is AI has to be driven by the CEO.
Yeah.
If the CEO doesn't believe in it, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's cannot be a lab project, right? Where we see the most competitive companies is when the CEO actually makes AI one of the key strategy and initiatives in the company, and that there are multiple executives that are tasked with taking that, building that strategy, and obviously executing on that strategy. And I think that's key to staying competitive in the retail industry.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, it's about focus and really knowing what your core competencies are and how you're going to play to those strengths and leverage AI in the right spots. All right. Well, fantastic. I love that. That was great. I could keep talking to you. I think we've there's so much to learn, and it's such a fascinating topic. All right, but I got to get you out of here on this. I got to play How Millennial Are You? So are you ready for this one? Uh-oh, here we go. All right, well, first question, same three questions we ask everyone, for those listening for the first time, the same three questions we ask at the end of every interview. But the first question, if you're in the grocery store, let's say, maybe during COVID, maybe pre-COVID, however you want to answer this, are you pulling out some form of mobile payment, say Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, cash, credit card? How are you typically paying for that transaction?
So I'm definitely playing with mobile payment right now.
All right.
That is, I don't know if that qualifies me as a millennium, because my age is certainly nowhere near a millennium, but I would say, especially with COVID and trying to make things touchless, I've certainly moved to using mobile payment as a way to pay.
Now, were you doing that pre-COVID as well? Be honest.
It's funny. I was doing that for coffee. Like
for
whenever,
sure.
Because anywhere you go to get coffee around here, they've got this square device. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just so much easier than pulling a card, right? So I was doing it mostly for that, but now I use it for, definitely grocery shopping and anything else that, most retailers have really now moved to taking Apple Pay and Samsung and all the other devices. So yeah, that's definitely the way to go now.
For sure. That's why I had to ask. We're seeing this shift a little bit, but I got to tell you, like, you're probably 10%. We've probably asked this question over 100 times now, and I would probably guess only 10% of the respondents have actually said that they use some sort of mobile payment. Most people are still pulling out a credit card, believe it or not. So
well, maybe I'm one of the few people that wears plastic gloves when they go to grocery stores. So for me, touching anything is scary right now.
Exactly. You could be, and it's efficient, right? And you're all about that too. So, all right. Well, second question, and you kind of alluded to this already, so I think you're going to score pretty high on this one too. How many times in the last week have you ordered, say, food or drinks, coffee, like you just mentioned, by way of a mobile app?
I usually do it once a week.
Just once a week, really? Why only once a week?
I cook a lot at home. Now my teenage son does it on a daily basis, and I nag at him because he spends too much money at DoorDash. But
DoorDash, okay, for sure. Who isn't right now? I think if you look at their numbers, but yeah. Okay, last question. If you could only use one social media platform, this is everyone's favorite. If you could only use one social media platform, what would it be and why?
Well, I use LinkedIn because a lot of my social media is around work, and that's how I connect to my network. But I also use Instagram for fun and fashion, and I like anything that's visual. I think a picture speaks 1,000 words. So those are my two social media platforms.
Any guilty pleasure follows on Instagram that people may be surprised to hear about from you, Azita?
No, I don't think so. I'm not that interesting.
Nothing. Nothing. That's awesome. That's great. Well, very good. Well, hey, that was an awesome discussion. I think you scored pretty high on the millennial scale there. You got Instagram, mobile payments. You're ordering from mobile apps when you're getting your coffee. So I think you did pretty well, comparatively speaking, to everyone we've interviewed. But if people want to get in touch with you, if they found the conversation interesting around everything we talked about regarding AI today, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, I would definitely say connect to me on LinkedIn and drop me a message. I do check that quite frequently. And then also, if you go to NVIDIA's website under solutions, we have a retail area. And there again, you can fill out a form that says contact me, and that gets to all the right people on our team that can answer any questions you would have. I have a session actually at NRF on Wednesday, the 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So please come join that session. But if you want to get hold of me, connect to me on LinkedIn. Be delighted to stay connected. That would be great.
Love that. Love that. That's always our favorite answer too. So for anyone listening, whoever might get that question in the future, that's always our favorite response. Yep. Just hit her up directly on LinkedIn if you're interested. Azita, again, thank you so much. All our loyal listeners out there, as always, be careful out there.